last night we did one. I'm trying to remember now. I can't remember. No, it was the Tuesday teaching talk, and someone was trying to get in who looked like not any name I had recognized. So again, I hope if you're using passwords in the waiting room and keeping in mind the new security features, it's a great opportunity just to keep out troublemakers and people who don't belong in your class. So that's always good to keep in mind. So we'll get started, and as I will continue to try to watch the invites if someone else is trying to get in here. So tonight we'll talk about sound and audio specific to teaching different contexts, ranging from talking about some microphones. I'm hoping Phyllis Schaefer will join us. She actually inspired some of these questions, as did Tim, in terms of thinking about what you might do in a live setting or pre-recorded setting, particularly if you want to use something like your phone. Maybe set that up on we'll talk about a tripod mount and some options. We can actually go through Amazon and talk about just some opportunities for doing some things in your class that allow you flexibility and also decent quality audio. I'm thinking for the purposes of what we're doing tonight that we're probably talking about at most 2 channels of sound. So there would be, let's say, the channel of sound that is your voice that's going to come through any number of microphones. So we'll talk tonight about some options for lavalier mics, which are really nice to be able to wear on your body that allow you to get pretty decent sound. There are also some Bluetooth options. I know Phyllis was talking about for her painting classes that she wants to be able to walk around her studio and have her voice heard by students while she's also looking at things. And that could be an option too. If you have, many of you, if you're doing photography or audio or certainly physical education, I think those are all disciplines that lend themselves to walking around in spaces, like if you're showing someone your photography equipment or if you're doing a workout. I've been seeing so many workouts pop up on YouTube and so forth recently, where people are doing things at home that they wouldn't do in the past normally at home. So to do some of those things, you do need some minimal audio technology, either a microphone, which could be Bluetooth, or could also be, as I said, a lavalier microphone. And then if you want to incorporate sound, we'll talk about later. I'll do an experiment for you later where we'll just hear my voice talking here on the screen, and then I'll use a simple emergency radio, and we'll position the radio in different parts here in my office so that you can hear how you might do that and approaching that in a very simple way, such that you can do what audio folks call a mix, a level adjustment, a sound check, and so forth. And doing this, I'm not expecting anyone to have big mixing equipment or stuff, and I do a lot of this because it's my passion. But I want to really focus today on the idea of doing it at a basic level. So probably 2 channels of sound or audio, a voice channel, and then maybe a music channel if you want to bring in, like for an aerobics class or for some sort of relaxation class, a yoga class, you might want sound playing in the background. We can talk about some simple ways to accomplish some of those things today. So I just want to mention that keep in mind one challenge of doing a workshop like this, and I've been discovering it with Zoom as well. Anything we're doing virtually right now is certainly challenged by the fact that we're all using different devices. Each of us has probably a different type of phone. If you have a Samsung, if you have an Android versus an iPhone, if you have an iPhone 7 versus a 10, or whatever the most current number is, the cameras are different on the phones. The operating systems generally get updated, but they sometimes actually slow down phones. So there's this whole thing about operating systems. And if any of you have updated, as I have on my Mac to Catalina, I've been running into real issues anytime I'm doing video rendering and mixing things down. My computer will just suddenly crash. It hasn't done it on a Zoom so far. But I mention all this because one challenge is, because of all the variation, depending on what phones we're using, add more variation to that if you plan to also incorporate different microphones, and then more variation if you're using a computer. So one of the things I'll argue for today is to keep things easy and keep things simple. Try to figure out what you want to accomplish with sound and audio in your class, and then move forward from there. But with this variation, there's an opportunity in the future And I did this today with someone. I was talking with Pat before many of you came on. We were working through a Zoom issue, and it took about 50 minutes, but we figured it out. And we were trying to share each other's screens and look at some things. So if something comes up in this and you want to reach out this week or next week, let me know. We can set up a one-on-one Zoom, and we can try to problem solve some stuff in real time. I think it sometimes works better than in a group setting because of all that variation. Again, if you're using a laptop versus a desktop, if you're using a Mac versus PC, all of those will have different opportunities there. And I'll talk about this later, this slide. But for example, if I want to go in and alter settings on a Mac, there's a place to do that under settings. I would click on sound. And then there's generally an input and an output. So the input is whatever is going into your computer. For our purposes, a microphone. And in many cases, it's just the microphone that's built into our laptop, our device, our smartphone, our desktop. In other cases, if I wanted to, I could very simply through USB take 16 channels of audio from my mixer here and very easily bring those channels into my computer. But for most purposes, really probably 2 channels of sound. One will be your input, which is a microphone. And then if you're using, some people I notice have been using pods or buds, I forget what they're called right now, or headphones. That's like another component as well. If you want to do that in a Bluetooth format, I have some Bluetooth headphones somewhere here. But to do that, of course, you're going to add further layers of complexity in terms of having to sync your Bluetooth headset to your device, whether it's your computer or your phone or your iPad. And then the same maybe for your microphone if you want to do Bluetooth. But anytime you get into this, I'll mention this in a second, you get into the rabbit hole of technology where you want to do one thing and that leads you to further devices you have to buy or settings that you have to establish or set up on your computer. Now that we live in the era of smart TVs, when I'm doing, I have a Apple TV. I'm going to let someone in if they're not a Zoom bomber. Let's see here. Or no, it's on chat. Okay. Oh yeah, Jason, question on the audio tracks. What was the question on that?
I didn't want to stop you. How you doing? You mentioned 16 tracks. So I'm not doing this at Tahoe, but I'm doing this at my home school.
Yeah.
And I could use some help because I teach broadcasting classes.
Sure.
So how would I incorporate on a Windows 7 machine the ability to show students multi-track with 16 tracks using Adobe Audition?
I'm not a Windows person. I don't know. Solange, I'm looking at Solange, who's our Emmy-winning sound designer. Do you know anything about Adobe Audition? Does that ring a bell?
It does ring a bell, and I do not know anything about it, and I too am a Mac girl.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a Mac machine. I could take my Mac setup and do that. How would you recommend I would do that in Mac? I would imagine I would have to do it via USB, right?
USB, if it's a program, let me show you a slide here. It's important if you're doing anything through Zoom, and I know Solange is teaching her class using a lot of technology and software. If you do a screen share like we're doing now, as long as you check, and this has been a little finicky, we've problem solved this, and I think it's been working for most people. If you check share computer sound, the nice thing about that is anything that's playing on your computer. So as an example, if I pull up a sound program, let's see here, and I probably don't have anything in it, unfortunately. But if I do that, let's see if I have anything, and hopefully this won't lock up my computer. It usually shouldn't. But one of the things you can do is, as long as you have share computer sound clicked. I'm going to abort loading this. All my my files, my sound files are on another hard drive, so I'm just going to abort that and force quit that. But what I wanted to show you was just simply that if you have the share computer sound, you could have your audio program going on screen, and then it would be very easy through USB, as long as your mixer has a USB port. If you're using a mixer, then yeah, essentially you could have all your audio tracks in real time on your computer. Now, the issue that's coming up, and a good person to chat with if you're curious about this, is our musician Eric Hallberg. He's a drummer on campus. You could reach out to him. I mentioned to him a particular technology connected to, sorry, I'm forgetting, Solange, the program you use for audio mastering.
Pro Tools.
Pro Tools, yes, Pro Tools. So Eric was saying for Pro Tools, or I was telling him that there's a little plugin you can get that allows for synchronization. So one of the issues that you get into is latency with your audio, because if you're trying to do music and really work on things in real time, you might get a delay. The delay could be 15, even 40 seconds. And I was watching a podcast on music technology recently talking about this plugin for Pro Tools called Audio Movers, which supposedly eliminates the latency. But that's a real big issue. So my big tip for today is anything you're doing at your level, or if someone just wants to do a microphone and have some music playing in the background, really to problem solve and test things. One of the things you can do with Zoom at any time, you could go on and start your own meeting by yourself. I would recommend you do that, and then record that meeting. After that meeting is downloaded, go to your recordings on Zoom, and then listen to how things came out. And it's a really simple way to do a lot of this stuff. So that's my answer. And again, I don't know Adobe Audition, and I'm not a Windows person. And that's that whole issue of versions and variation is we're all working in different operating systems. I'm sure for Solange it's challenging because you're teaching students and then you realize they all have different phones and different apps and technologies. So
what class do you teach, Solange?
I teach in the digital media arts department. I teach film production, how to make a movie.
Okay, so what I'm teaching is beginning audio production, which is a component to a film department.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why I use Adobe Audition is Pro Tools scares most students away. So we instructors teaching Pro Tools, and then the film, television, media arts instructors teaching Adobe Audition.
In the film industry, we don't use Adobe Audition at all. We only we're exclusive to Pro Tools.
I know. I know.
We're getting all these versions. It's so challenging, right? Remember the days where, we just were writing things on a notebook and there wasn't a different version, right? But nowadays, with all these different versions and compatibility issues and licenses and keys and all that kind of stuff, it's a real challenge. I wanted to mention to all of you, and I'll move on here, but if you want a long version of this, which typically is probably more than you need, and since I'm an audio video geek, I kind of live this stuff. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of this. When I'm not teaching, I'm often doing a lot of videos or musical kind of things. So I put the longer version of this, which is my video on making videos, and I get into microphones, I get into all the possibilities from very basic level to more advanced. But for the purposes of the workshop today, I think we'll have the assumption that we're trying to do a few things with audio, and then we can have conversations about what we want to do. And again, some of this we can take offline if needed. So the rabbit hole of technology, one of the challenges with any kind of technology, like for me, you see my modular system over here, is when you get started with one piece of technology in one application, you realize that you need something else to make things work. So for example, for today, if we want to use our phone and we want to get a Bluetooth microphone like Phyllis and show our art studio, that's easily accomplished. But then you have to ask, what are you going to do with your phone? Are you going to actually be carrying it around? Are you going to maybe get a device that would allow you to put it on a desk some way? Is that going to give you the right angle? Are you going to actually go in and buy a mount for your tripod that will allow you, some flexibility in terms of being able to move around a space and then take advantage of the fact that you have a stationary camera that allows you to focus on what you're teaching. And even tonight, I'm trying to figure out how to frame all this and show you everything here in my space. So the rabbit hole of technology is something to keep in mind. And I know there are some conversations or maybe some questions out there. If you purchase something on Amazon, if you buy a microphone, if you buy a tripod adapter, if you buy a tripod or something like that, and this is actually just a microphone stand, and if you already have a microphone stand, you can just get the right threaded adapter, and you can essentially have your standard camera mount on there for any camera that you might have in your studio or your space. But I think if you have questions about purchasing devices or technology, I haven't had any updates or heard updates about whether or not the college would be supporting instructional supply purchases given the virtual situation. So I think it's a question out there maybe. And I know when a few of you contacted me, or someone who contacted me who's not currently online asked, how expensive is this going to be and who's going to pay for it kind of thing. So Solange?
As of today, they're not purchasing any additional gear or equipment to teach with.
Oh, did so you heard that update?
Well, I've been asking for a sound effects library and for a music library, and if they don't have it, they're not going to get it.
Oh, okay.
It could be different for other people, but for me, that's what I was told.
Solange, I was going to say real quick before I get to Pat, that BBC recently put all their sound effects archives online totally for free, open source.
That's outstanding. Open source is the name of the app?
No, it's, I bet I could, let me just, since it's on my mind, I bet I could find it for you right here. I just saw it somewhere on Facebook. BBC sound effects. Yep, it's right here, I think.
Oh, that's better.
Yep.
I was going to say talk to Kurt Munger.
Yeah. No, this one's really good. Let me put it in chat.
You mean Kurt Molnar? Kurt Molnar?
Not Molnar.
Munger.
Okay.
I spelled his name in chat. But yeah, so BBC sound effects, if you wanted to use... Did something just play? Oh, I think it did. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Huh. I thought it played, but then it stopped.
Scott, do you have a recommendation on a Bluetooth microphone?
I will be talking about that later. We'll look at Amazon. We'll talk about some Bluetooth microphones. Yeah. Let me answer. Lesia asked about training on VoiceThread. So actually, I didn't plan a VoiceThread training. We probably could do another one in the future. I didn't really have that on my list tonight, but that is an app that you can use in Canvas to embed audio. But I would recommend there's something even easier than VoiceThread inside of Canvas, and that is just using the, I'll just pull it up here on the screen so you can see it. That is using your record upload media tool, and that just allows you to do a very basic audio or video recording. And now VoiceThread, of course, I think people like it because there's an interactivity. It's almost like an annotated PowerPoint, and you could actually use either Canvas Studio to do a similar approach where you could talk through a PowerPoint, and you can even do video quizzes on Canvas Studio, or at any time, as I said, if you go into a content page, any place in Canvas, you can, this was from working with Jim Grant today, so I can delete that, but you can just go in here, right? Keep in mind, if I click on the record upload media tool, at any time I could either record video or audio just by clicking on one of those two icons. And that's a really easy way to embed audio inside of any Canvas content page. Certainly VoiceThread is its own application, and it allows you to do some things that are much more interactive in terms of using audio. So yeah, maybe in the future one, I'm always trying to assess if there's a lot of interest in VoiceThread, we could do another one and pull in Treva as well. So yeah, and the other thing, Solange, before I forget about sound effects, is there are other places out there as well. Google has some, and YouTube as well, I think, has some pretty limited stock music audio beds that you can download if you just go to Google. I think it's maybe under through YouTube because they own YouTube. But I know if you produce a video, under the editor function on YouTube, you can actually pull up stock royalty-free clips. So that certainly is one option. And then for me, for my purposes, for videos I create, and I pay out of pocket, but I use this site called Video Blocks. I think they're now called Story Blocks, which I pulled up here. But that has, and I pay, I think it's $150 a year I pay because I do a lot of videos. I want something that is...
And Scott, while you were away, Tim had a good question, and it's
a
question I have too. Tim, what I'm doing, because I want to do something similar, is I'm actually broadcasting to my students. I want to do something completely different because I think students are getting tired of seeing just the professors talking.
Right.
So what I've been doing is I've been actually lowering the music where I'm not playing it at full volume.
Yep.
And then I'm able to talk over it. But I'm in the same boat. I'd love to find maybe a secondary program where we could combine both. That's an excellent question. Maybe Scott might know. You want to ask it again?
Yeah, no, actually, I have that coming up later in the presentation, just talking about some approaches we might take. Yeah. So, okay, sorry about that. So that was the Catalina issue. I'm going to try not to open other programs. I don't know what's going on with Catalina, but it does that quite a bit. So just to jump back on board here, so talking about then what we're doing today, I would say first, make it as easy as possible, decide what you want to teach, and then make that happen with the level of technology that you're thinking of. So as I've been talking about, as I've been showing you, and as my computer's not been cooperating, one approach is to use your computer. And I think if that approach works for you, using the audio on your computer, using your built-in microphone and your webcam, it's pretty easy. So as an example of trying to do maybe what Tim was getting at, if I want to do a lecture where I'm in a space, again, it might be an opportunity. If I'm doing this on the fly, I would definitely want to ask my students as I'm doing this, hey, can you guys hear me? And, ask for a reaction or something like that, because if I start to move far away from my computer, then obviously the audio might not be loud enough. Now, if I want to bring in sound, so if I use this emergency radio, which has the weather on it, supposedly, let's see here. So what I could do is over time, as I'll talk about later, adjust the audio based on whether the students can hear it or not, but probably best effort that I could do is to test this ahead of time. So to actually go in and do a Zoom session where if I have a radio or a Bluetooth speaker set up, I would try to play that audio in the background. Now, what Jason was getting at, trying to do something as far as, and we'll talk at the end about mixing two audio signals. I think that's going to be a little more involved because it could involve a mixer, and most of us don't have mixers sitting around our studios. There could be a way, depending on what operating system you're using, to go in, as I said, in a Mac. You could go in and adjust. If I had other inputs going on, if I had the ability to adjust the volume, I could adjust my microphone volume, and then I could also have music playing at the same time. So that actually, I think, would be fairly easy. Like right now, if I want to go to just anything on YouTube and play a video, I could talk at the same time while the video is playing.
Labeled you to play a synth while maybe.
And so obviously what I could do, if I didn't want to go in and have to adjust my Bluetooth or my microphone setting, I could just lower the volume. And if I were playing music, I'm just trying to see if some kind of music track will come up. This might be more like what some of you are getting at. I could theoretically talk over this and get to the point where I feel like there's a good mix between the music and my voice coming through the microphone.
Scott, I got a question based on what you just said.
Go ahead.
Will Mac allow you to use, because I have an older Mac and I'm actually using a mixing board.
Yeah.
Could you do both? Could you have your mixer going through your line in on your Mac, playing the music, and then could I talk over just the open mic on the Mac? Is
you
that
could.
Possible?
Yep. I mean, it depends on your mixer, but what I could do, I was trying to do a YouTube live stream using my mixing board and using my modular coming into my mixer, because obviously if I have 16 channels of sound here, I want to be able to, on the fly, do my mixes. So it worked, and what happened was I brought it into my Mac, and then at the point of going to your sound panel, my mixer would come up as a choice, and I would just click on that. And so I would have some choices then to click that and to use that sound. Now, as far as then your microphone, I think that would still work. I haven't tried that, like playing, and I don't want to crash my computer right now, but I haven't tried that. But I think if I did that right now, that would be possible. So yeah, I think you could play your audio from your mixer and then also talk over the microphone. But
valuable.
Yeah, no, but again, I think like if you found some music on a site like YouTube, like this one, and again, if you dialed in the sound, and an easy way of doing this is, when you're doing a mix on a mixing board, right? You're thinking about your levels and you're thinking about fades and so forth. But at some point, at a basic level, you would say, okay, the level for the sound source is whatever that is. And in this case, you could go in, and these aren't actually marked like on a mixing board, like a 1 through a 10, but you could figure out the sweet spot. And as they will suggest later, do a recording on Zoom of you talking over that music. Figure out what the sweet spot is, and you could even take a screenshot of the toolbar here to get a general sense of where your music level needs to be, such that the mix with your voice is good enough so your students can hear both. When you start to add channels of audio, as so many of you know better than I do here, then you get into further layers of complexity, because you're thinking about the fundamentals of sound. You're thinking about frequencies and not having different instruments that occupy different frequencies competing at those registers, like a kick drum at 40 hertz versus cymbals way up in whatever kilohertz they are. So, that gets more and more complex. But at a simple level, let me just check the chat room here. I think you could do... the question is, do I post the PowerPoints online? Indeed, I do. So if you ever want any of the information I'm doing, and now I'm feeling like we're getting soothing music. I'm going to turn that off in a second, because I think I'm going to have... It's pretty schmaltzy. I don't know. Okay. So I will put this in the chat room. At any point, you could watch the video of this and all my other videos at the website that I included there. So let me just ask, because Tim, I know you were planning on doing, or maybe you're already doing, live music and your voice. Would this technique work for what you're thinking about doing or are doing?
Well, I've been able to work it out where I have an external speaker close to the computer.
Okay.
So the students hear my voice and hear the music.
Okay.
When I go to the advanced setting on the share screen, and I click that middle box,
mm-hmm.
and it allows the music to come in.
Mm-hmm.
They get a better sound. Obviously, it's like going straight into their computer rather than this external thing going to a microphone. So it's a greater sound, but they don't hear my voice. So
right.
It must take over the microphone itself, because it's just playing from the computer. Because I have some on Spotify playing some music. So is that when I go to that advanced setting, is that what's happening? Is it's playing what's on the computer there, the music, better sound, but it's not picking up my voice through my microphone. So it must be shutting it off.
If you're on a Mac, your input should be your microphone, and if you have other, like if I plug in my, a USB microphone now, then on this particular input setting on a Mac at least, that becomes another option. But the two shouldn't compete with one another. I don't know, Solange, do you have a sense on that?
That's absolutely correct. It should not compete.
They shouldn't
against
compete.
Each other.
Yeah.
So even though I have the music coming through the computer itself, my microphone should be picking me up. Is what you're saying, Solange? So is it maybe there's some setting or something? I don't know. Okay.
Well, one thing that could happen is if you, if I turn on a Bluetooth microphone, and I don't just offhand have a good...
Tim, what is it that you're speaking on? Because you've got a horrendous hum.
And you do have a hum, Tim.
You're also over distorting. You're distorting. You on a microphone?
No, just sitting here on my computer. I have an external speaker so I can hear you guys better.
Okay, maybe the external speaker is not
humming.
But what we're hearing is a horrible hum, and you're distorted.
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, you're distorted.
I think your volume level is too loud on your microphone. It needs to be back down a bit. And then technically we all should be wearing headphones. That will help.
Yeah.
Now because maybe it's...
Well, and you might be hearing a hum now because I was trying to demonstrate. So, Tim, I think one thing you might be encountering is if I have like a mini speaker here, and if I start to put that close to my computer, and this is a bad example. I don't have music offhand. I'm just doing a little quick demo. But this then maybe is competing with the fact that it's close to where my microphone is. So therefore I'm getting kind of this, I don't know, loop almost between my inputs and my outputs.
You get a horrible hum. It creates a horrible
So
hum.
that could be an issue there.
It's on it now, so I don't know why it's coming.
Well, Tim, I mean, one thing I was thinking about again, and we'll talk about here in a second, options for if you purchased like a lavalier mic, and you could potentially use this, you could clip it to your body, and then you could walk in the area in front of your computer, and maybe you could have that Bluetooth device, the speaker, more like at the back of you, so that your voice is projecting and your microphone is primarily picking you up. In the foreground or background, I guess it would be. You're still picking up some of that ambient music that's playing. So, but it's one of those things you almost have to experiment with over time just to see what is going to work the best. So I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I wanted to mention then. So we talked about audio and doing that through a computer. Again, I think phone might be an option for many of you, and I know Phyllis was specifically talking about doing this for, if you want to use your phone, again, I think you're probably going to have to think about two things. One would be, are you using it for live video? Are you using it directly in your class, like in your Zoom sessions? Or are you planning to do something where you're walking around a space, recording what you're doing, like Phyllis recording her studio, and then later uploading that to Canvas Studio, or it would probably be on Canvas Studio unless you had a YouTube page. So if you're using a phone as a device to do this, then of course I think you have to ask some questions about what's going to hold your phone. You can go on Amazon right now. If you click on, and I just, to be honest with you, when I search for this stuff, I just simply type in the device name. So I would type in, for me, iPhone 7, and I would put camera mount, right? And then I would see all the options coming up for that particular phone. And of course, because all our phones are different, you do want to think about, although a lot of these have become, I think, fairly standard, such that there's a wide range on the width, and so you can adjust it. But as you can see, they range in price from $11. I've seen some as low as like under $10 even. So, you know, that might be option one to think about, is what is going to hold your phone. And then, of course, you get into, not only do you need the mount for your phone, but you have to think about getting a tripod. Tripods are not super expensive, but that would be another thing, because obviously it's going to be inconvenient if you're going to try to set your phone up. And I'll try to answer some of the chats in a second. So you don't necessarily need like a tripod with a super fluid head. Some of those could be hundreds of dollars for people doing high-end audio or high-end video and still photography. But you could get a decent one for, these are coming up really expensive actually, but you know, this is probably not going to be great, but it might be good enough to do what you want to do. I mean, they have the GorillaPod ones that allow you to attach a phone to, or a camera, probably not your 35 millimeter, but you can attach it to any surface, and it's pretty easy to use. It also can be attached on top of a desk as well. And so that could be an option to get one of these. They're super cheap, just as a way of having a small setup. And even if you don't have the height extension of a tripod or of like this microphone stand, you still can set it on something like a shelf or a couple of books, and then that way you can record your lecture, do your real-time Zoom, whatever it is that you want to do. So I'm really recommending, you know, when you think about tripods, a mount, whatever it is that you're purchasing, to really think about, you know, not breaking the bank. If it's true what Solange was saying, that they're not doing instructional equipment, that's definitely something to think about. You could claim it on your taxes, right? But you maybe don't want to spend hundreds of dollars. But I think if you have already a setup that involves a computer, as Tim was getting at, maybe the best solution is to experiment with the space itself. If you're getting distortion like we were hearing, maybe try to put your speaker behind you, do a run through on Zoom, do a recording, listen through, as Jason was saying, headphones or earbuds, so you can hear higher quality audio. And if it sounds pretty good, you can hear your voice giving instructions, and you could hear the background music, you're probably in pretty good shape. So all the uses are going to differ. For someone like Phyllis, who maybe wants to walk around her studio, I think her application is to use something like an iPhone. I don't know if she has an iPhone. And then to pick up a, and this is all a spaghetti bowl, but to pick up a lavalier microphone, and these are very cheap. And they run, under $20. And it has a fairly long cord. The cord does get all tangled, and it takes 10 or 15 minutes to untangle it. But that's option one. Option two is certainly to think about Bluetooth. And I saw recently a Bluetooth microphone for, I think it was just standard, not just specific to iPhone, for about $29. How good it is, I don't know. I mean, you could definitely pick up some bad equipment, but there are options out there. Now, if you do pick up a microphone, one thing to think about is to definitely look at the audio plugs. So if you take, somewhere in here I have some stuff to show you. If you take and look at, I was going to show you the difference between a stereo and a mono jack. Obviously, cords are different, and if you actually take apart a jack, you can see like the ring and the tip on these. And this has to do with the circuit. If you're into doing electronics and stuff, you know more about this. But one thing I want to mention is that if you get some microphones, be sure that they will have the adapter included, because in some cases, depending on what you're doing, if you're trying to go to an audio recorder and record with that, which is always an option, and audio recorders have built-in microphones. And I often will use an audio recorder to do these Zoom workshops, because I found that the audio compression that Zoom does, I just don't like the quality of the sound. So I usually will record with my audio recorder. I download the Zoom video, and then I sync the audio, which is pretty easy to do. But if you're not going to do that and sync your audio and video together, I do not recommend an audio recorder. Now, an audio recorder, if you're just doing a podcast style, Lesia was talking about maybe using something like VoiceThread. If you only want to do audio, actually this would be a really good solution for you, because they're relatively cheap. They're really good quality. You have the option to have a external input. They have built-in speakers. You can attach it to a small speaker, and then you download an SD card and import the WAV file into your computer. So if you only want an audio, it's actually a really good option. But of course, you could also do that in Canvas. But just be aware of your audio plugs. And you often, like with a Mac, will need a converter. So if you want a microphone that is going to go into your Mac, you have to use the appropriate converter. And the challenge is with every camera out there, if I'm using my my small action camera to do recordings, I can't use, it's the rabbit hole of technology where I'm constantly having to think about buying, so as you can see, I have a whole box of adapters and clips and different mounts, everything specific to the camera that I'm using. So one challenge I think with any of this is that it does open up sort of an endless pit of having to think about what you're going to need to accomplish what you're trying to do. So just be sure that if you buy any equipment that you want to use, say with a cell phone to record your lectures, that you think about all the ancillary items that you need. Again, an audio recorder, I guess I would say, is probably only going to work if you want to do audio only podcast, or you have some technical skills such that you could download and sync audio with video. But if any of that doesn't even make sense, then I would even maybe go there. Tim, you have a question?
Scott?
Oh, yeah.
Scott?
Yeah, Tim.
This is something cool you may want to, if other instructors are trying to get hold of you, or if someone on the line right now see this. There's since I'm doing things live, there's a thing called Pivo, and basically it's a mounting unit.
Yeah.
You can put your feet on it, and what that does is as I walk around, it'll follow me. So it's not like just it's on a tripod, and I'm hoping I'm staying in the picture. It actually follows me as I go around. It's really cool. Maybe that's what Phyllis should get, especially if she's moving around her studio.
I happen to have one. Look at that. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. So the Pivo actually mounts, as Tim's talking about, mounts on a tripod, and then it follows you around. And I have one. I purchased it, and I haven't been using it. So yeah, that's an option, certainly, a Pivo. And it's about $100. Yeah. So that's actually a really good option to mention, is the Pivo. $100. It also has I think it has there's an app that you have built in, and then it does all the tracking, what Tim is talking about. So Pivo is actually a good option too. Solange?
What audio recorder are you using?
So this is the Tascam DR05. It's like about $99. Zoom does some as well. Zoom does, Tascam. I can just put it in the chats. The Tascam DR05.
It's one of the better ones. That's a good one you're using. I've had some of my students use that in the past
Yeah,
few years.
I think it's pretty good. Zoom does some if you get into the more $200, $300 range. Zoom has, like 4-track field recorders, which are kind of cool. So, but this does everything that I want. It does good recording of audio. And then if I'm doing a small music setup, I actually use it just to take the audio in, and I download the file, and it's decent. So yeah, an audio recorder would be fine if you wanted to do something that was only like, a podcast, unless you wanted to be able to learn how to sync your audio and your video. So it's something to think about. There's a question about VoiceThread, and we should have a license for VoiceThread. I should just maybe look now to see, but I'm pretty sure that because it's not loading right now. So again, for microphones, I think it's really up to you. All microphones, as many of you know, have different uses depending on what I might be doing. If I'm recording somewhere here, I had a bunch of different microphones that I use that could range from contact microphones, recording vibrations, and I could also have water-based microphones that I can submerge in water, and then I have electrofield microphones. So every microphone has a specific purpose, and certainly if you're buying one, I would say you wouldn't necessarily want to get, say, one of those conference microphones like omnidirectional, but I really do recommend these lavalier microphones. There isn't a particular brand. This is about a $20 one, and I use it to record a lot of my YouTube videos, like for Academic Senate. In some cases, I have this going directly into my iPhone. What's nice about a microphone like this, and I worry a little bit about Bluetooth, that you might get into an issue of latency where there's a delay between the video and what you're saying. I'm not sure. Maybe it depends on the quality. But I know with these, I haven't had any issues, and I can use it with my Blackmagic camera and just simply plug it in and capture what I want to do, and then I can use the exact same microphone simply by using the adapter for the iPhone. And I've used this one for a couple years, and it's really reliable. And what's nice about that is there's a little better presence to your voice. One criticism I have of a lot of videos that people do on YouTube is that they often just use the built-in particularly I've noticed with laptops, the built-in microphone, and it's a very tinny microphone. Just the audio response I think is not great. So if I do anything on my desktop, I use this blue microphone, and it has a lot of presence to it. And if you get into high-end microphones, you can spend $10,000 and really crazy. So obviously we're not talking about that range, but I think for a lot of our purposes, if you use a clip-on microphone, whether you go with Bluetooth or you go with the corded microphone, I think that's going to give you pretty good audio quality. And you could simply type in, how do you spell lavalier?
Lavalier.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Oops, I just had it. There we go. So that's what I recommend, is simply type it in and see what comes up. Again, I don't think you have to break the bank and get, a $75 one, but a lot of these are in the $16 range. And they will tell you as well, they have that adapter built in that I was talking about. Just really important to make sure you have the adapter built in, and then maybe get your iPhone adapter as well. And for that, you could just type in iPhone audio adapter, probably is going to come up. Yeah, like the Lightning to 3.5 millimeters. So just can pick up one of those as well, and that will allow you then to plug it into your iPhone. And they're very cheap. So now I know it's shipping right now with COVID. Prime is not. It looks like now it's saying next Wednesday, so it looks like it's at least a week out. But that's still pretty decent. So now again, that being said, you don't necessarily need all that technology if you just want to do something using your laptop or using your desktop computer. Whether or not you want to do a Bluetooth, and I'd be curious to hear if Phyllis is going with a Bluetooth, but if you type in Bluetooth microphone, let's see. Sometimes you'll get, I'd be amazed, I don't know, like $29. That seems pretty good. Does that seem too good to be true, that you're going to get anything decent? I don't know. Solange, you think you can get a $29? I would be surprised, but again, one option you have with Amazon is you could buy something and return it. But I realize that most people, and a lot of these are karaoke microphones, but probably most people, unless this becomes a hobby of yours, you probably don't want to necessarily spend even $50 or $100 on a microphone. Again, if the college is not providing these for instructional purposes, you could always write it off on your taxes, if that applies to you as far as what level of detail you get into on your taxes. So I think kind of a few different scenarios. I guess one is to do recorded audio, and to me it sounded like what Phyllis wanted to do in her studio setting was to walk around, have a Bluetooth microphone, and record that to her phone. And then when she's done, she would take that video from her iPhone, simply airdrop it to her desktop or her laptop, and then using Canvas Studio, of course, you can immediately draw in any video that you want. And I think Canvas Studio in that sense is really nice, because then you could use that as your one-stop shop for all your media. So you can record media directly in Canvas Studio. And everything I've said tonight about using recorders and microphones, if you simply want to do a webcam, if you simply want to do a tutorial of software on your computer, I wouldn't do anything related to what I've been talking about. I would simply go to the recording function on Canvas Studio and use that, because that's going to be super easy. It will capture it for you. You don't have to adjust much of anything. You can choose your inputs as far as if you have different microphones hooked up to your computer. But that's really easy, and it even gives you the VU meter to tell you your level and how your level is, and so you can do an adjustment. If it's getting too loud, obviously, right, it's peaking if I'm getting into the red or the orange. So I think really that's one of the easiest places to go. I think what many of you were interested in was either like Tim's scenario, trying to do instruction, speaking, and having background music, or Phyllis moving around a space such that you want to show people what that space is. If ever I'm doing YouTube videos talking about music technology, walking through my space, I of course then, like maybe what Phyllis is going to be doing, I'm going to mic myself up, I'm going to put on my lavalier mic, I'm going to plug that into whatever camera I'm shooting my video on, and then I'm moving around. And for the most part, unless I'm moving 50 feet or something, this has a pretty long range. I don't really care about the cord. I like the certainty of knowing that what I'm recording is not going to be out of sync with the video. And that's what I worry about with a Bluetooth microphone. But you're certainly welcome to experiment and to look around and see what's out there. Now, what Jason was getting, I think, if you're doing this real time, doing live audio with a class, you want to think about just issues of technology on your end and also the student's end. Obviously, my computer had a crash tonight. That's always okay. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Good to. I guess Tim had to leave for a family thing. But you do want to think about just the practicality of doing some of this live. And again, I think it's very easy during a class to simply ask your students if they're seeing what's on the screen. Can they see your screen share? Can they hear your audio very clearly? What we all picked up on what something was going on with his setup, but to fix Tim's setup, we'd have to go in and look at what is he working with, right? What are his settings? What's he using, and so forth. And that's the challenge, I think, as well. We shouldn't assume that every student out there, I've been on many Zoom sessions with up to 80 people, and some people cannot unmute themselves, or they try and they cannot figure out their audio on their computer. So you should also keep in mind that some students might be having issues that are independent of anything that you're doing, right? We can't always say if there is a correlation between something you're doing with your audio and your video on screen and what a student is hearing in his or her space, and so that's always a challenge. And I guess what I was going to say with audio levels and mixing, and many of you know this better than I do. We're not talking about mixing sound at the level of nuance and trying to think about that level of detail. We're basically, probably in most cases, if we have one audio source, which is a voice, we're thinking about, can the students hear that? If they can't, how can I adjust that? If I'm adding a second channel of sound, which sounds like for yoga classes, I want to have some ambient sound playing. Again, I think there are some opportunities to do some dry runs on your own. And what I would recommend is go into Zoom, create a sample recording with your background music playing, and then have your voice speaking your narration. Listen to the recording after the fact. If it sounds pretty good to you, again, using headphones or of some sort, then great. You could upload that to your class, or mark down what those settings are, and next time you do it, whatever your device is, if you have a way of saying the volume should be 5, make a note of that, and then when you do your class, also think about the placement of where that speaker is going to be. Because again, we're not necessarily talking about setting up complex chains of sound from mixing boards using USB cables going into a computer and so forth. So to try to keep it as simple as possible. So Jason, the microphone I'm using tonight is just, I have a Mac, what is the name of this computer? I don't even know what it's called. It's a Mac 4 gigahertz quad core Intel. It's one of the 27-inch like Mac, whatever the standard Macs are. And when I bought it years ago, I maxed out the RAM and everything. So it's just the built-in microphone. So I agree with you, actually. The built-in microphone on Mac is pretty good. There is something going on with the audio compression in Zoom that I find it just kind of grates my ears. And so what I do is I just record with an external, and then I just sync the audio. But I'm really picky about that kind of stuff. So yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know what. And I think the microphone on a Mac is somewhere. I don't even know where it is on the computer physically. I can see where the camera is. I assume it's somewhere in the front. So yeah, it's just the stock microphone. But for all practical purposes, when I'm doing something that's like more of a voiceover, I just plug in the blue microphone, this particular one. I think the board bought one of these. I think it's around $100, and it's really nice. I like the presence that I get out of this microphone. So yeah, I use that one for stuff if I'm trying to do like really more like better sounding audio. So, and yeah, the room acoustics, I don't have anything special going on, so I'm not sure. I guess I just lucked out. So, and again, as I'm saying, device specific issues, I think that if you are trying to do something with your class and you want to do that on a phone or you want to do that on your computer, just to think about what you're trying to accomplish and then what opportunities are out there to get around some of those hurdles. And actually, we probably won't have time to talk about this, but Jason was asking about other mixing programs. There are so many free programs out there now. One of the best ones I use for just doing quick, because for some reason my mixer will output really low gain tracks, and so I often use Audacity. It's totally a free program, and Audacity just allows you to bring in a WAV file, and you can do incredibly, all kinds of effects. If you have any VST files or, audio effects that you use in your video or audio programs, you can also bring those in as well. But it does all kinds of equalization, things you probably don't need, but all kinds of effects. And then you can also do very simple splicing. And again, what I do is just simply bring in an audio track and I do a quick amplification and adjust it, I don't know, however many dB, and then I save it as a file, and then I can use it in my video or audio program. So Audacity is totally free. And if you have Catalina, you should Google, there's a workaround to get Audacity to work with Catalina. You have to open up Terminal and type in a few commands. Don't ask me why, but it's the case. So let's open up for some Q&A maybe. I know we lost a couple of minutes there, so we can go over a few minutes. If you have to go, I totally understand, but questions or comments about what you're trying to do with audio in your classes right now with some of your applications? I stopped the screen share there. Questions or comments, concerns? I'm trying to see any other.
I did figure out with sound on Zoom that I can speak over the YouTube videos that I play. I can also speak. So I find that to be very advantageous.
Yep. And so in your case, are you having to adjust? Did you even adjust like the volume of the YouTube video or no? You just left it?
To. It
okay.
Worked. It worked
yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And I think that's probably where a lot of us are at in terms of if we want to do something with YouTube. Like I know Tim left, but Tim, if you hear this video recording, I would almost say like maybe don't do that external speaker. Instead, if you could find that music on YouTube, now of course with copyright, if it's a copyright thing, then you're not going to find it on YouTube because YouTube is really good at taking stuff down if it violates copyright. But I would say he could just load his audio file of that music on his computer and then play that through whatever. It's no longer iTunes, and I don't know if he's a Mac guy or not, but just play that on your computer and then talk over that. I think that would be the best option instead of trying to do a Bluetooth speaker and trying to talk into the computer and because whatever he was doing, it was distorting, and I couldn't tell if he was using an external mic, but it was really distorting whatever he was doing.
I think a lot of it is that if he were to put on headphones, he probably would have heard what we heard.
Yeah.
And I also agree with you that if you open your own Zoom meeting by yourself and start recording stuff, you will be surprised. That's what I did. I did recording by myself, and it works. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, to definitely go to Zoom and try that. And Leslie, I haven't forgotten. I know I didn't answer your question, so I'm going to get to those. Sorry about that. Let me go back to real quick screen share because you had a question about VoiceThread, and VoiceThread was available and should be available, but you're saying maybe it's not anymore. I'm trying to see if it's... I didn't get any information that VoiceThread was not... it's not... Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not showing up here, VoiceThread.
No, I would ask Treva. I think she used to use it.
Yeah, but I thought it was still... I've used it too, and I thought it was still available under the navigation menu. But maybe we lost our license or something, because I think you're right. I'm not seeing it there.
I remember seeing it too. It used to be there.
No, here we go. It says VoiceThread. It says it's installed. Right here. Huh.
What is VoiceThread? What is it?
So VoiceThread is, I would almost say it's like PowerPoint with audio annotations. So you can record annotations, talking students through like what's very similar to like, a PowerPoint application. It's pretty cool, but it looks like it says it's installed. I could click Add App, but that would lead me to believe that it should be available. But why it's not showing up under settings, I don't know. It says it was installed, so right here. Yeah, maybe, you know what, after we get off tonight, let me email Treva, and then I'll CC you as well, Lesia, and then we could see what happened, because it used to show up here. So yeah, let me check on that.
Scott, now, when you were able to install it, where did you go? I'm not seeing it under apps, but where was the original menu where you saw it?
Oh yeah, so that was under. I went to settings first, and then I clicked on apps, and then I just typed in a search, and then VoiceThread came up.
Yeah, that's what I did. I mean, maybe I don't know. I need to double check or something.
But it's saying it's installed, and so if it's installed, it should be. Now wait a second. Hold on. Is it under the media menu? Maybe it's under the media menu. I think it might actually be. Let's just check real quick. So this menu here, does that have VoiceThread? It does not. Okay. Because this menu often has some of those external, and I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing Quizlet, Canvas Studio, Vimeo, SlideShare, 3C Media.
How did you get to that menu? Can you show me that real quick?
On the menu I'm on right now.
Right there. Okay.
Yeah, so this is the, there's like a blue V. If you click on that, that's where you would go to incorporate Canvas Studio in any content page. So I will, when we get off tonight, I will, I'll check with Treva and then CC you, because we used to have it, and it was as simple as it would pop up on the settings when you click there, and then clicked on navigation, there would be a VoiceThread tab, and I'm not seeing it. That is really weird. So I'll find out. And it could be that maybe we no longer have the license. So I'll have to find out. But I remember as of at least 2 years ago doing a workshop where we had to use VoiceThread in our workshop. So yeah. But I will try to find out the VoiceThread. I'll email Lesia and Treva on that. Anything else, we could talk offline as well. If you have some very specific things you're trying to do, we could set up a one-on-one sometime just to talk about things. So yeah. Jason, I think you're muted. Are you trying to? No? Were you trying to talk? No?
Yeah, I was asking my wife.
Okay.
I want to ask you, not related to
Yeah.
this class, what is that patch panel that you have back there? Is that, I can't think of the name of that instrument.
This one here?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, so it's a modular synthesizer.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
What's mine called? I can't think of mine. I've got a little one.
Yeah.
That I bought. I love it.
Yeah, they have small versions of those. So they have mini. They have a mini modular like that.
Ooh, that's what I got.
Scott.
Yeah. Thanks, Pat.
Bye.
Yeah.
Right.
So fun stuff. So yeah, it's modular or Eurorack synthesizer. It's called. So
That's cool. I
Yeah.
love your studio setup.
yeah, thanks. It's fun. Now I just have to use it. So take the time. Cool. It's whatever. I just try to find a space that, and typically I'm just doing very generic wall, and it works fine for meetings and stuff. But yeah, if you have like a lot of things going on in your background, then you definitely want yours is working perfectly. So Jason's is, so yeah.
Jason, are you using a green screen or you just have a normal wall?
I don't know what color is your normal wall.
I'm not using anything. I just changed my Mac computer. I was using an old Mac computer for everything,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't allow me to do this. And then either it came up with a message, or it said you have to have a different type of video card, and the newer Macs have the better video card. On my PC computer's in my studio. I don't have any video on that.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm a PC guy. I'm not a Mac guy. I'm new to Mac.
Okay. I'm only Mac, so yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll draw to close. If any of you ever want to talk about audio offline, we could, because love the topic. So cool. All right. Well, good luck with everything. There'll be another. I'm not sure the next workshop what it'll be, but be on the lookout for that. Just depending on interest. And then Lesia, I'm going to check on VoiceThread right when we get off and contact Trevor and see what's going on with that. So cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everyone. This was fun.